love a skin tint, and I'm not necessarily looking for a matte base. Sometimes I want something natural, sometimes more glazed, or maybe like a soft blurred finish. These are 4 that I keep coming back to because they work really well on my oily skin, even if they're not necessarily marketed as that. They all have slightly different finishes. So if you're someone that is looking for a skin tint and you want it to work with your oily skin, and also not necessarily looking for something super matte, these are 4 options that you could try. For each one, I have included swatches on skin and on my hand. All I've done is apply over a simple moisturiser. I haven't used any primer, I haven't used any powder, so you can see the true finish of all of these. In terms of how I get oily, I tend to show more around my nose and on my chin. So usually when I'm looking for a skin tint, I'm looking at how well it grips in those areas. First up is the Lisa Eldridge Seamless Skin Enhancing Tint. This comes in 20 shades. It's £37 for 30ml. And my specific shade at this time is T10. It is winter right now, so I am a little bit paler than usual. And T10 is described as a medium with neutral undertones. For right now, this is a pretty good shade for me. The brand positions this as a fresh, luminous, light coverage tint, and it has 78% skincare ingredients. Having a little peruse on the website, it does say it has glycerin, prickly pear seed oil, sunflower seed oil, squalane, vitamin E. Texture-wise, this is the most liquidy of the ones I'm going to talk about, and the most lightweight of the 4. It melts into the skin and it genuinely looks like skin. You can build it up slightly, but if I want to cover over any dark marks, I do prefer using it with concealer. Is it designed for oily skin? Probably not. It feels a little bit more targeted to normal and dry, but that said, it actually wears really well. I don't necessarily need a primer, but I do feel like I need to set this one. I also just really like that Lisa Eldridge in general has more of a variation in undertones in her bases. The T10 is actually very neutral, but I tend to match a lot of my base products with my neck. My neck in general does look more of a yellow olive, whereas my face probably is a little bit more pink, but not massively so. This still looks really natural on. It almost looks like I haven't applied it. It gives glow without looking greasy. I did briefly compare this to the Victoria Beckham foundation drops when that first launched. Having used them more side by side, I can confidently say that the Lisa Eldridge has a little bit more longevity, and I just think is a little bit better on oily skin. The Victoria Beckham is gorgeous and the finish is beautiful, and obviously you have the skincare benefits in that as well. I feel like the Victoria Beckham starts to separate around my nose and on my chin a little faster, or maybe in a less flattering way. It's just a really beautiful everyday base. Of the 4 here, it is my favorite. The next up is the Danessa Myricks Yummy Skin Serum Skin Tint. So this one's a little bit more expensive. It's £43 for slightly more, so it's 45ml, and it also comes in 20 shades. My shade is number 7, and this is a medium with warm undertones. This one is a lot thicker. It has more of like a gel consistency, kind of like Lisa Eldridge. It leans a little bit more skincare heavy. It has hyaluronic acid, vegan collagen peptides, ceramides, and squalane again. And on oily skin, this performs surprisingly well. It definitely has a little bit more grip to it than the Lisa Eldridge. Maybe it's that thicker gel-like consistency. And because maybe the texture is slightly thicker, I feel like it just has a little bit more staying power. Or maybe you don't need as much powder than you do with the Lisa Eldridge, or at least not in my oily bits. The coverage is a buildable light to medium. Shade 7 isn't my perfect undertone, but it still looks really beautiful on, and actually it's not that noticeable that I'm wearing makeup if I just wore it completely by itself. The one downside for me with this product is pilling, and specifically there's a vitamin C serum I love to use every single day. This does not like that product. It always balls up and pills, because sometimes I've taken that serum away and I've noticed that it's fine. So if I keep my base simple with not too many products, this works fine. And that's what I did for the swatches, so you don't see any issues at all. I would actually wear this more if I didn't have that issue, because the finish on this is stunning. I might even like it a little bit more than the Lisa Eldridge. Most people might not have that issue, so this is a really gorgeous one if you're looking for that really like dewy finish, but it's still gonna grip to your skin. And then speaking of grip, next up is the Milk Makeup Hydro Grip Gel Tint. This is £34 for 35ml and it comes in 15 shades. The shade I swatched is shade 7 because I am paler than I usually would be. We are in winter. When I'm deeper, I do actually prefer the shade 9. So shade 7 is a medium with neutral undertones, whereas 9 is a medium tan with more warm undertones. I just feel like 7 works a bit better, even though it's definitely on the lighter side. It is the dewiest of the 4. It has a gel texture similar to the Danessa Myricks, and it also contains skincare, hyaluronic acid, niacinamide, and blue agave extract, which is meant to help grip it onto the skin. On first application, this gives a super glazed donut effect, and that is very in keeping with Milk Makeup and the rest of their products. They definitely go for a more dewy look in general, but what I do like is that despite this, it still grips really well, because I feel like a lot of products that I've used that have a dewy finish just slide off my skin, whereas this does actually lock on. It just looks very, very shiny. When you apply this product, what you see at the beginning is largely how it's going to be at the end of the day. So it's definitely consistent. It just doesn't slide around as much as you'd expect for this type of finish. If you are very oily and you don't want to look this dewy, I would pair this with a mattifying primer and use a lot more powder than I probably do with the other tints, especially for the center of my face, around my nose and my chin. That's where I'm really going to see this product look shiny. But I kind of like that this looks like you've got a really healthy amount of moisturiser on. I think it looks worse on camera than it actually looks in person. In person, it looks more natural. It looks more like you just have a healthy glow. And undertone wise, I find the medium shades lean just the tiniest bit too pink, whether they're neutral or warm, but I find that's a common problem that I specifically have across multiple brands. What I do like about this is that the shades are quite flexible, so even though it's not necessarily the undertone I would pick, it doesn't look bad on my skin. It still kind of blends in. The one I have is definitely on the lighter side, but it still stretches quite well and it looks a lot more seamless once I've applied bronzer, blush, all that jazz. So this is definitely for those that like a more obvious glow, or maybe you're only oily in a specific area, so you don't mind managing that shine a little more strategically. And then last but not least, we have the Fenty Beauty Eaze Drop Blurring Skin Tint. So this is £30 for 32ml, so the lowest price of the ones that I've talked about here, and this has 25 shades, so it has the biggest shade range as well. My shade is shade 14, which is a medium with a warm olive undertone. This is also the oldest launch of the ones here, and probably the most traditionally suited to oily skin. It's marketed to all skin types, but this gives more of a soft, blurred finish. I don't think it's an extreme matte in any way. This one seems less skincare focused, which might be a sign of the times because it is an older launch. It feels like that's become more of a priority in recent years, that brands feel like they need to include skincare, or maybe customers are asking for more skincare in their foundations, their skin tints, or their makeup in general. Something it does have, like the others, is hyaluronic acid for a more hydrating feel. It gives a really natural finish, but the emphasis really is on this blurring effect. I can really get away with minimal powder with this one. It lasts really well. This looks so beautiful, and my one issue, unfortunately, is a massive priority for me, and it's the undertone. So even though this is described as a warm olive, it's so orange. It is actually too deep for me. This is my summer shade, but either way, even when I'm actually tanned enough and I have the right depth of skin tone to wear this, it does just look really orange. Whereas with the others, even if the undertone's not perfect, it still works really well. I was tempted to buy a lighter shade for this video, but I've tried 11, I've tried 12, I've tried 13, and they are also really not the right undertones for me, even though some of them, I think at least one of those is described as neutral. Unfortunately, the undertone with this one, I just can't get along with, but I know that won't be an issue for a lot of people. The texture, the finish, and the longevity is incredible. And it's also lower priced than the other ones here. This is arguably the best for oily skin without being overly matte. And if you're less keen on dewy finishes and you actually want something that's more softly blurred, then this is the safest option out of the four. So to summarize, if you want the most blurred and long wearing option, Fenty is your best bet. If you want dewy but controlled, I think Danessa Myricks gives you the best of both. I feel like this is the most balanced. And if you love a lot of glow but you actually want it to stay on your skin, I would go for Milk. And if you want the most natural skin-like finish but don't mind powdering, I'd say go for Lisa Eldridge. And her bases are great if you need a bit more variation in undertone. For me personally, Lisa Eldridge and Danessa Myricks are my top two. But if someone with oily skin wanted the safest recommendation, I would go for Fenty. What I've realised is I just don't want a completely matte base anymore, even though I have oily skin. I just want something that wears well, but still looks like skin. These four strike that balance, but in different ways. So I guess it really comes down to how much glow you're comfortable with. There's some other brands I didn't speak about here. Some I just haven't used enough to recommend confidently. And then there's others that look beautiful, but they are definitely just not suitable for oily skin because they just slide right off. If you've tried these, even if you don't have oily skin, let me know what your thoughts are and how they wore for you. And if you have any tints that you really love, let me know. Thanks for watching if you made it this far. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.